Imagine waking up to find a beautiful girl sleeping on your balcony. However, you notice that she was very strange because she claimed to be an angel. When you saw her wings, you realized she wasn't lying. Since the girl had nowhere to live, you decided to let her stay with you, where a beautiful love story might just be about to begin. Hi, my name is Kai, and in today's recap, we will watch Studio Apartment. Good lighting, angel included. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, because I'll be bringing new videos every day, and I need your help. The story opens with Tawa going to the world of the humans. She is very excited, however, she was a little nervous because she didn't know how to act around them. Then we see Shintaro, a boy who started high school a month ago and has been living on his own ever since, having to study and work, so he comes home exhausted. Then, one night, after going about his routine, the boy looks at the mess in his apartment and decides to just go to sleep, as his body is showing signs that the flu is approaching, feeling heavy and sneezing all the time. Also, before going to sleep, Shintaro thought that he was feeling a bit lonely and would like some company. The next day, when the boy wakes up, he pours some milk into his mug to help him cope with the flu, and while he's drinking it, he notices that he's forgotten to open the window. At first, he worries that it's dangerous for someone to break in, but as Shintaro doesn't have anything of great value, it's not such a problem. Anyway, when the boy goes to close it, he comes across a girl sleeping on his balcony. Shintaro is startled and falls backwards, resulting in the milk in the mug falling on her. At that moment, Tawa wakes up and says good morning to the owner of the house, but Shintaro is embarrassed about getting her wet and getting milk all over his clothes, so he takes her to the bathroom and leaves her to clean herself while he waits outside. In the meantime, the boy was thinking of 1,000 possibilities as to why a girl had slept on his balcony. Shintaro thought it could be a prank, a thief, a cosplayer, among other things. However, Tawa interrupted the flight of his imagination when she appeared asking to borrow a change of clothes, wearing only what was under her clothes. And since the boy didn't have time to clean up his mess, the only thing he had clean was a white t-shirt, which served as a nightgown for her. Afterwards, the two of them sit down to talk, and Tawa apologizes for having invaded his balcony to sleep without even asking him first, but Shintaro says it's okay. In the course of the conversation, we discover that the girl thought he lived in a mansion because in her mind, the building was all his and the apartment was just a storage room. So when Tawa is confronted with the truth that his house is just that square, she is surprised. The girl wants to thank him in some way and pay for his accommodation. Of course, at this point, our young boy is tempted to ask for a few things, but he says he doesn't have to. Tawa begins to suggest that she could cook for him, but Shintaro denies it, and when she talks about cleaning the apartment, she ends up finding some adult magazines. So once again, the boy says he doesn't need them, already embarrassed by the discovery. Soon another situation steals Tawa's attention. The girl sees the neighbor's two kittens fighting on the balcony, so she decides to separate them, which results in her hands getting scratched and Shintaro having to bandage them. The boy takes the opportunity to ask her why she ran away from home and where she is staying, since he thought that was Tawa's situation, but Shintaro comes across something a little unusual. The girl says she is an angel, and that she has been sent by God to go to the human world to learn more about them and make them happy, making sure they stay on the path from their world to heaven. Shintaro doesn't believe Tawa's words, and when she ends up asking to stay at his house for a while, the boy begins to feel sure that she has a screw loose in her head. As it's time to go to work, Shintaro hands them her dry clothes and tells them that the girl won't be able to stay at his house, after which he walks her part of the way to her job. In the next scene, we see Shintaro leaving work early because he has the flu, which is preventing him from doing his best. He goes into a pharmacy, and as soon as he comes out, the boy finds Tawa in the company of a man, and when the girl sees him, she greets him happily. Shintaro asks her who this man is, and Tawa reveals that she was walking around town when this kind man appeared and invited her to go to a hotel with him. At the same moment, Shintaro takes Tawa's hand and begins to lead her away from this strange person, telling her that she can't go out trusting just anyone. But on the way, the boy ends up fainting due to his condition. When Shintaro opens his eyes, he realizes he's home, and when he looks over, he sees Tawa all worried and excited to see that he's okay. The boy asks her if it wasn't difficult to drag him home and realizes that she was telling him the truth about being an angel, when the girl replies that it was easy, since she flew him. Tawa even prepared some porridge with what she had in the house so that Shintaro could warm up and eat properly. After the meal, the boy decides that she can stay with him for a while, even for the sake of the girl, who is quite naive. What's more, to prove that she really was an angel, she let her wings out, showing that she had always been telling the truth. The next day, as soon as he wakes up, Shintaro starts to think that he had a dream that seemed to be true because of his fever. But when he looks to his side, he is startled to see Tawa in his bed and realizes at that moment that it was all true. Then, after going to a store to buy food for breakfast, Shintaro asks more about Tawa, such as what she had said earlier about bringing happiness to humans, and the girl replies that she is still learning, and that this was one of the reasons she was sent to find out the answer to this. Soon after, Shintaro begins to think that they need to go shopping for essentials, such as a toothbrush and more food to cook, since his stock doesn't have much, so the two of them go to the mall. In the end, the boy ends up buying some clothes too, so that Tawa can camouflage himself among the humans without attracting attention. When they get home and the girl starts to put away the goods, she is surprised to find a mug that she had seen earlier in the store and liked. So Tawa looks at Shintaro, and he tells her that she now has her own mug to drink out of, and the girl is very happy and grateful. But in the evening, Shintaro realizes that he's forgotten the most important thing, buying a new bed so that they don't have to share it anymore. To inform the protagonist of how she slept on his balcony, Tawa explained what happened when she arrived on Earth. The first thing that struck her was that everything was beautiful and full of lights, but she was still unsure how to make contact with humans. However, she had a guide to life on Earth for good children, so it said that she had two options: stand taller than humans by emitting a powerful glow and present herself in a grand manner, or hide her wings and blend in with the humans so as not to attract attention. She was unsure of what to do, as she didn't know which would be the best option. However, since she wanted to be friends with the humans, she had the idea of getting to know them first. Being sleepy, she decided to look for a quiet place to sleep until she found a protagonist building, and thinking that his house was a room with no one, she ended up sleeping there, not knowing if there was a place for her in the human world. Shintaro said he was glad everything turned out all right, and she said she was glad to have found him too. They were about to have dinner, and when the protagonist ate the food made by Tawa, he discovered that she was a great cook, and the girl had learned that from that very guide. As he ate, Shintaro thought that he would love to eat this every day, and thinking about how good Tawa was, he wondered if he really deserved it. With that, he wondered if there was anything he could do for her, so she asked him to explain something after dinner. After eating, the two went to the bathroom, and the protagonist taught Tawa how to use the bathtub. However, when she started to bathe, Shintaro's imagination went wild, and he started to think about her doing it. He tried watching TV to control his imagination, but he only managed to do this when he started studying, as he is one of those people who concentrates when he starts doing something. After the assignment was done, he needed to go to the bathroom, but he forgot that he no longer lives alone, so he went in without knocking and ended up seeing her changing. He apologized for the misunderstanding, but she was fine with it and even offered to stay behind the curtain so he could do what he needed. While showering, Shintaro thought about how to resolve the situation until he looked over and saw Tawa offering to wash his back. This made the boy very embarrassed, especially as he had to sleep in the same bed as her during the night, so he thought he urgently needed to buy another bed. Being in this situation, he couldn't sleep properly, and waking up at 5 a.m., he had to go to the bathroom, planning to go back to sleep after that. However, he saw her changing once again, so he lost sleep and thought that they needed a rule so that things like this wouldn't happen again. However, after brushing his teeth, he went to use the bathroom, but just as he was sitting down, Tawa came in to brush her teeth with him and ended up seeing much more than she should have. This was their third day living together, and the protagonist was very sleepy. The food was as good as ever, and after eating, he had to go to school and Tawa wanted to go with him. He told her she didn't have to do that, but the girl said she couldn't stay away from him if she wanted to make him happy. However, knowing that they might have a problem, he said that she should stay at home, which she accepted a little sadly. On his way to school, Shintaro was feeling sorry for Tawa, and while he was thinking that he was too sleepy, a friend of his appeared and slapped him on the back. In addition to him, a girl also showed up, so we met Shuichi and Tsumuji, who realized that the protagonist looked like shit. The two are childhood friends, and although Shintaro comments that they seem to be a couple, Tsumuji shows that she likes the protagonist and not Shuichi. At home, Tao was doing all the chores, and when everything was done, she had nothing left to do. And while she was thinking about Shintaro, she realized that he hadn't brought anything to eat for lunch, so she got very worried. At school, Tsumuji found it strange that the protagonist only had juice for lunch, so she was worried about him and asked him if he wouldn't like her to bring him food every day. The protagonist was impressed that she made his lunchbox herself, and she was embarrassed, so she told him that she only wanted to help him as a friend. Seizing the chance, Shuichi asked her to make it for him too, which she refused, as the boy can eat the food made by his mother. While they were discussing this, Shintaro noticed that Tao was flying by him with a lunchbox in her hands. To solve this, he asked the girl to go to the terrace, so he ran out there. In addition, some boys saw Tao flying, but believed they were just seeing things. Arriving on the terrace, the protagonist was extremely worried about what might happen if she was discovered. However, when he realized that she was there because she was worried about him, Shintaro apologized for the way he was acting, then invited her to eat together. In this way, they shared the great meal made by Tawa, and it seems that the protagonist was beginning to fall in love with her. The scene cuts, and we see that a teacher has gone to their classroom to ask for someone to help carry some objects, so Tsumuji volunteers. On the way, she kept thinking about the protagonist and what he might be doing. We also see her past, where she ended up getting lost and was very scared, until the protagonist found her and took her back home. That's how she met her first love, but she didn't see him for 9 years and couldn't even remember the boy's name. However, when she passed school, she saw Shuichi trying to befriend a boy who had also passed and realized that he was her childhood crush, so she felt that fate had brought them together. However, she didn't tell him about what had happened in the past so as not to seem like a stalker. Suddenly, Tsumuji saw Shintaro through the window, and when she realized that he was with a girl, she was incredulous, even more so when Tawa spread his wings and began to fly. As soon as he gets home, the protagonist apologizes to Tawa about the lunchbox thing, and she does the same for flying off. Afterwards, Shintaro notices that his clothes are clean and folded on the table, so he asks the girl if she has taken care of it, and Tawa replies that she has done it with pleasure. She even washed the boy's underpants and sewed a teddy bear to cover a hole in one of them, which makes the protagonist very embarrassed. So, Shintaro decides to agree with Tawa that from now on, he will take care of his underpants by himself. Meanwhile, Tsumuji is mulling over the memories of what she saw earlier, thinking that she could have asked the protagonist about the girl with wings, but she's also afraid that he'll think she's going crazy. Tsumuji starts trying to convince herself that what she saw was an illusion, since human beings don't fly, and believes that the shock of having seen Shintaro with someone may have triggered it in her. The girl also remembers that he didn't talk about wanting her to make him lunch, and she comes to the conclusion that she loves him very much. The next day, the protagonist has to face a situation with Tawa. She has come to believe that he doesn't like her anymore because he doesn't want to take the lunchbox that has been prepared to school. So that Tawa doesn't go after him or something, the boy accepts the food, warns her that he'll be back after 9 and that he's very happy with the care she's taking with him. Shintaro has to find a way to explain to Tawa that he won't be able to take her to school anymore, as the others will be suspicious. But despite having these small issues to resolve, the boy is really happy with his life at the moment. At lunchtime, the protagonist sits down with Tsumuji and Shuichi to eat together, so when they both see the lunchbox he brought, they are impressed and Shuichi even asks if he made it. But Shintaro gives the excuse that he helped the lady in the street who paid him with a lunchbox as a thank you. But just as the boy takes the lid off the container, there's a note that Tawa had left for him, and at that moment Tsumuji is surprised, as there's no way the lady in the street would know his name, but the girl is sure of one thing, that it was another girl who prepared the food. In the next scene, we see the protagonist going to his job thinking about the problems he's been facing and the solutions he could come up with, but as he doesn't seem to have many, he ends up hitting his head on a post without knowing what to do. At that moment, a fortune teller with a crystal ball appears. She tells him that the boy has entered a phase of intense problems with girls and that, in order to protect him, the woman would have a product that would help him get away from his problems, which would be expensive, so the protagonist quickly leaves the place thinking that it could only be a scam. As soon as he arrived at work, he received news from his boss that they would have another girl on shift today, who normally works on different days to Shintaro, and his boss asked him to be nice to her. And while he was thinking about what the new girl looked like, the protagonist went to the room they used to change, but as soon as he opened the door, he saw the new girl changing clothes. She was only wearing her underwear, and the boy even managed to notice the print of the clothes she was wearing. Shintaro ends up being slapped, leaving her hand marked on his face, but then the new girl hands him a cold cloth, and the protagonist takes the opportunity to apologize to her, who replies that she is also to blame for not having locked the door. The girl's name is Izumi Noel, which prompts Shintaro to ask if she was born on Christmas, and surprisingly, the girl replies that she was. At this point, the protagonist realizes that he has made a mistake, but Izumi soon continues with her tasks and asks him not to mention what happened earlier, for which he is grateful, as he thought he would be denounced. The work continued, and during it, Shintaro couldn't get the scene of Izumi changing out of his head. Even looking at her was difficult, despite the girl's beauty. Soon the two of them are released to finish their shifts, but first their boss asks them to try some sweets that are in the testing phase and then talk, at which point the protagonist expresses being a little uncomfortable about it. When they arrive at the break room, Izumi says that if he's bothered her, she can leave, but he replies that it's nothing to do with her, but that he's starting to think he's useless. Izumi is a little shocked by what she's heard and tells Shintaro that he's done a perfectly good job, but that's not what he was talking about. The girl finds the sweets on the table, and the protagonist picks up the spoons, so when he approaches the sweets, he comments enthusiastically that they are cherries, and at that moment, he remembers the clothes Izumi was wearing underneath, which makes him feel embarrassed. Shintaro then tries to take the conversation in another direction, but when he turns away, he notices that Izumi is also embarrassed. So he decides to ask her if she's really bothered by the situation, and despite her red face, she replies that she's not. And as Izumi gets more embarrassed, the colder the atmosphere seems to get, which leads Shintaro to think that the refrigeration in the place is faulty. However, he soon realizes that the girl is shivering and worried about her. He tries to approach her, but she pushes him away. The rest of the restaurant is also very cold, so much so that the customers start asking the staff to turn up the temperature. Returning to Izumi, she reveals that she is a Yukiana, and the protagonist believes her, because since angels are real, anything is now possible. But the girl soon goes back on what she said and also starts blaming the fridge, but the more panicked she gets, the worse the storm in the room becomes. Then the protagonist shows the girl that he trusts her, and the two of them run out of the place to get the temperature up for the customers. Once they're a little way away, Shintaro looks back and realizes that the girl has brought the sweets with her, so they end up sitting on a bench and laughing about the situation. Meanwhile, Tawa has spent the day playing video games at the protagonist's house, and when she looks at her watch, she realizes that it's past the time he promised he'd be back. At Tsumuji's house, the girl is unable to concentrate on her studies, so she decides to go out for ice cream. Returning to the protagonist, he discovers that they both go to the same school, and even though he tries to strike up a conversation, the tense atmosphere is still there. Izumi wonders why he believed her so easily, but Shintaro explains that something similar has happened before. Soon, the girl realizes that he could be a safe zone for her, so Izumi decides to tell him her story. Her family has had Yukianas for generations, and when they are angry, sad, or embarrassed, they end up blizzarding, becoming terrible at controlling their emotions, and the worst of them is Izumi. As a result, she chose to stay away from everyone and became a loner. But when high school started, the girl wanted things to be different, so she returned to school and started a job to help her get used to people. Izumi starts to freak out again because of the way she acted when someone saw her changing her clothes and says she should hide at home like before, commenting that she thinks she's a lost cause. So Shintaro steps in and tries to calm her down, telling her that she's been great, that she's always done her job by smiling at her customers, and that she's amazing, because many people who want to change don't even take action, meaning that Izumi isn't as much of a lost cause as she thinks. She becomes emotional at what she hears and thanks the protagonist for reassuring her, then asks if they can be friends and is delighted that the boy accepts. After things have calmed down, Shintaro notices feathers falling to the ground, and when he looks up, he sees Tawa flying above them, which leaves him desperate and Izumi surprised. To make matters worse, Tsumugi shows up, and now his secret of living with an angel is in danger. The three girls start talking together, and in order to deal with the situation, the protagonist asks them all to calm down. First, Shintaro asks Tsumugi to pretend she didn't see anything and go home, but her friend says that won't be possible. Meanwhile, Izumi is impressed by Tawa's cuteness and talks about how angels are her favorite characters in manga and anime, which lightens the mood a bit. At one point, Tawa is asked if she really is what she seems to be, and since there's no hiding it, she confirms the question and tells her why she came to Earth. To clarify things more calmly, the four of them decide to sit down, and Shintaro explains how Tawa came into his life, that he's living with her, and the lunchbox situation is also clarified for Tsumugi. She begins to feel jealous of seeing him so close to other girls, even more so because the other two call him by his first name. Tsumugi also discovers that Izumi and Shintaro work together, so her jealousy begins to grow. At one point, after everything seems to have settled down, Izumi decides to reveal her secret, as she doesn't think it's fair for only Tawa to have had his identity exposed, so the girl tells them that she is a Yukiana. And to prove that she's telling the truth, Izumi uses her powers. The girl felt comfortable telling them, since the protagonist had said that the two are his friends and he trusts them, and Izumi thinks she can too, since she's friends with a boy like the other two. So Tsumugi also reveals something. She says that she wet the bed until the 5th grade, and Shintaro asked her to stop before she says anything else that would embarrass her more. Tawa feels very loved by her new friends and thanks them for what they've just done. At home, the protagonist is surprised when Tawa asks if he's angry with her for what happened that night, but Shintaro is quite honest when he says that he's not, because since she appeared on his balcony, his life has improved a lot. But anyway, the two agree that Tawa will no longer do anything reckless like flying around at any time of the day. Shintaro is so worried about what might happen to the girls if someone who wants to catch them finds out that he even dreams about it, which results in him waking up screaming and Tawa having to calm him down. The next day, the protagonist shows up at school with dark circles under his eyes, and Tsumugi also has some that are worse than his. So we find out by listening to the girl's thoughts that she spent the night thinking about her lover alone with Tawa in the apartment. Tsumugi finds Izumi and Tawa very beautiful, which makes her fearful, as she believes she is no match for them. But her heart calms down after Shintaro tells her that he's not dating either of them. Later, after school, Izumi's personality changes completely when she's around Shintaro, and her classmates start to notice, because normally the girl ignores everything and everyone, but she's overjoyed when she sees the protagonist. She had been waiting for him so that they could leave school together to have some fun, but today is a day when they both work, so the plans end up being put off until next time. Meanwhile, at home, Tawa thinks she wants to know where Shintaro works and what he does, so when she asks the cat if it knows where he is, Tawa decides to follow the animal, thinking that this will lead her to the place. Returning to the protagonist, because of the way Izumi is treating him differently from the others, their boss is forced to ask Shintaro if they are dating, so the protagonist is embarrassed and has to explain to the man that they are just friends. Their boss also believes that something might be going on, as the girl is asked to work the same days as Shintaro on next month's roster. As the restaurant is full, the protagonist has to help serve the tables and take orders, so when he goes to serve the new customers who have arrived, he is surprised to come across Tawa and Tsumugi. She tells him how she managed to get there. It turns out that she lost her cat on the way, but ended up meeting Tsumugi, who, knowing more or less where it was, decided to accompany Tawa and help her. Tsumugi actually took the opportunity to see how the boys' dynamic with Izumi worked during working hours. At one point, Izumi's attention is drawn to her by her boss, because the energy she's having at work is very good. However, the girl is a little too excited and he's asked her to control herself, especially when she's going to talk to the protagonist. Although it was a quiet conversation, Izumi always goes to extremes, so she decides to warn Shintaro that during working hours, they can't be friends. Returning to Tawa, she asks Tsumugi what Shintaro does at the place and finds out that doing odd jobs means working, which surprises her, because as the boy is a student, she thought he didn't need money. Tsumugi explains to Tawa that sometimes the pocket money they receive from their parents isn't enough, and that's why some students work half shifts to earn extra money. So when Tsumugi goes to the restroom, Tawa decides to try to help out at the table so that Shintaro can leave early, but this results in the protagonist needing a break to talk to Tawa. Shintaro explains to her that he earns by the hour, so he can't leave early, and when asked if he works to cover her expenses, he explains that he was already doing this before she arrived, because the boy wanted to gain experience while he was in high school. She feels bad that she's not doing anything while he's at work, so the protagonist tells her that as well as having a better life, his house is always organized and clean, his clothes are fresh and food is ready when he arrives, which is a lot that's only possible because Tawa is with him. She understands that she just needs to carry on doing what she's doing so that the boy will continue to be happy, so she promises that she'll go home to wait for him. Seeing the scene of him talking to Tawa in the stairwell, his boss is charmed by the youth and believes there is a love triangle going on between Izumi, Shintaro, and Tawa. But this idea is shattered when Izumi comes to him and asks him to make next month's roster the days when the protagonist doesn't work. In the next scene, we see the protagonist eating another meal prepared by Tawa, and out of curiosity, he decides to ask her how food is made in heaven. So the girl explains that there are trees with fruit, however, what they pick is not fruit, but something that when you open it, there is already food inside, which is much more practical than on Earth. Now we see Tsumugi's house. The girl is thinking about everything that has happened since the incident in the park with the Anya and the Yukiana. The thing is, now that she knows about Tawa, Shintaro keeps asking her for advice about the girl, and this is making Tsumugi increasingly jealous. But when she thinks about it, she realizes that he's always been a bit different from other people his age, since in high school Shintaro already lives on his own, without even having his parents in the country, because they've gone abroad to work, and to make up for it, he still has a job. Not to mention that as soon as he got close to Shuichi and Tsumugi, he told them about living alone, because he trusted them without even knowing them properly. The girl thinks that if she had told the protagonist about her feelings before Tawa appeared, suddenly things would have been different. However, Tsumugi is given an opportunity to reveal her feelings to Shintaro, or at least try to, as her mother has given her a gift certificate from a donut store that she had one, so the girl can take the protagonist there to spend time together. Tsumugi likes the gift so much that she hugs her mother, tells her how much she loves her. The next day, the girl tries several times to invite Shintaro to go with her to the store, but Tsumugi seems to get stuck every time and feels very embarrassed at the thought of doing so. Her problems are solved when Shuichi, on seeing the coupon in the girl's hand, comments that the three of them should go to the shop after class. However, he is then reminded by a classmate that he has to stay to do a task, so in the end it's just the protagonist and Tsumugi. Before going to the store, Shintaro asks them to stop by the library, as he wants to study more about angels and Yukianas. There, he ends up praising Tsumugi's proactivity in always helping him, and, along with a compliment, the protagonist adds courageous and manly, which doesn't go down too well because she's a girl. After a while, because he's tired, the boy ends up falling asleep while reading a book, so Tsumugi takes the opportunity to stare at him. However, the two of them stayed there for an hour, and when they went to leave the library, they ran into very heavy rain. Shintaro suggested to Tsumugi that they leave, but the girl had been waiting for this all day, so she grabbed her umbrella and told him that they would go the same way. On the way, the two ran into a little boy who had tripped and broken his umbrella, so Tsumugi gave him hers to carry on, and Shintaro shared his with her. Tsumugi, for the first time after meeting her beloved's other friends, felt good about being normal and happy to be by his side, even more so after having fun at the donut store. The next day, Shintaro decided to go out with Izumi after school, as they had agreed a few days ago. The protagonist was nervous because he didn't know what to say to her, but the girl took it in her stride and everything flowed very well. Afterwards, they both ate ice cream and had a lot of fun with their frozen tongues. Izumi ended up revealing to Shintaro that it was the first time she had been out after school with a friend, and that she had told him about her secret of being a Yukiana. The girl was so happy to have this weight off her back that she could hardly sleep the night it happened, as she was afraid it had been a dream, As soon as she gets home, we see that Izumi has kept the ice cream lid as a souvenir of the moment they had together. The protagonist, on the other hand, got a surprise when he got home, because there was another angel next to Tawa and they were both wearing nothing but towels. The little angel slapped Shintaro across the face, calling him a pervert, and told him that his worries had been confirmed, so she was going to take Tawa back to heaven. Once they were both dressed, the girl introduced herself. Her name was Shu, and she was ready to take her friend back to heaven. However, Tawa didn't want to leave and convinced the girl to stay for some milk. Shu said that she had God's permission to come down, as Tawa hadn't been in touch for a week. She found Tawa because she could feel her aura and didn't like the place she was in at all. When she found out that Tawa was living with Shintaro, the little girl got very angry, saying that human men were all perverts. Tawa defended the protagonist, saying that he was nice, and when she said she would cook, she made Shu realize that her friend was serving as a maid. She hadn't yet understood that the man Tawa had spoken to was standing in front of her, but when she did, she got even angrier, even thinking about killing him. Because of this, Tawa scolded her and once again had to calm the girl down with milk. After that, Shu tried to leave with her, but Tawa said they couldn't because Shintaro said it was dangerous to leave the house. Because of this, Shu asked her how the girl would learn more about humans if she didn't leave the house, which made Shintaro and Tawa think again. However, as she still didn't want to leave, Shu went to talk to the protagonist and told him that he also had doubts about living with Tawa. Shintaro agreed with this, but said that it was natural to find Tawa a little strange, as she lived in a completely different place, but he told her that he was very happy living with her. Jealous and angry, Shu began to say that Shintaro was a liar, and once again Tawa defended him, saying that she believed with all her heart that he was a good person and made it clear that she would not leave. Shintaro was very embarrassed to see Tawa speak so highly of him, and refusing to accept it, Shu started crying and ran out of the house. The two of them went after her but ended up losing sight of the girl, until thinking that angels like to stay in high places, they had an idea of where she might be. While they were in the elevator, Tawa apologized to the protagonist about what Shu had said about him, but Shintaro said that everything was fine and that he knew the girl was just worried about Tawa. When she found her, she apologized to Shu for not thinking about her feelings, and when the little girl said that Tawa hadn't done anything wrong, the two hugged. Suddenly, however, a voice came out of Shu's clothes and said that she would be sent back home in a minute. Since she couldn't convince her friend to come back, Shu told Tawa to take care of herself and made it clear to Shintaro that if he does anything bad to her, he'll make him meet his maker. And just as she was saying that she was the person who loved Tawa the most, she was sent back to heaven. After Shu left, Tawa commented that she would like to know more about humans, and he agreed that the rule of never leaving the house was too strict. So from now on, they decided that they would go out together until she got used to it and could walk the streets on her own. So a few days passed since they started going for walks after dinner, and Shintaro started teaching Tawa rules such as waiting to cross the street and always looking both ways. As they watched TV together, Shintaro thought about Tawa riding the bus and train around the city, but when he thought about how dangerous it could be, he became even more worried and decided that she wasn't ready yet. On the TV, there was a news item about a sweet store, and Shintaro mentioned that they could get there by train. This left Tawa in shock, as she thought that the stores shown on TV weren't real, since the protagonist had commented that the series shown on TV were fictional. As she really wanted to go, Shintaro didn't care what she thought about trains being too dangerous. So the next day, he began to teach the girl how to ride the train, and when they arrived at the station they wanted to go to, they walked hand in hand to the store. Tawa loved eating that candy, and they had a lot of fun together, even though the protagonist was embarrassed several times because people thought they were a couple. Because of this, when she went to take his hand, Shintaro pulled away, saying that only people who were in a relationship walked like that. Suddenly, a woman knocked Tawa down, and instead of apologizing, walked away as if nothing had happened. Because of this, Shintaro apologized, as humans are always selfish and only care about themselves. However, Tawa said that if you don't care about yourself, you can't care about others. This made Shintaro think about how kind she was and that he was very happy to have met her, so they continued their walk.
When it starts to get dark, Shintaro suggests that they buy a packed lunch to eat and go home to rest. However, a surprise awaits them at the door of the apartment, and it's the protagonist's aunt, the owner of the property. In the end, the two end up missing out on the food that was bought for them, because Mari eats it all. It turns out that she's a mangaka and spends day and night working, so it's difficult for her to take breaks, meaning that she eats very poorly. But the two of them still have a cake that his aunt brought to celebrate her birthday, which, apparently, was forgotten by her nephew. This, coupled with the fact that Shintaro doesn't read her work, makes her fall into endless tears. After singing happy birthday, Mari decides to ask him about Tawa, and the boy gives the excuse that she is his schoolmate, that they were together because of a job, and denies all the times his aunt has hinted that the two of them might be dating. Shintaro starts to get embarrassed when Mari starts talking about how cute he was as a child, because the boy's parents worked too much and she was the one who looked after him, and promises that next time she'll take the photographs for Tawa to see. The aunt even comments to her nephew that it would be great if Tawa joined the family, if only from her side, as the woman found the girl very thoughtful and cute. After a while, Mari starts to think about the freedom the boy has in the apartment, so once again she embarrasses him by telling him not to mess around with illicit things or do that with several people. Later, as it was getting darker and darker, the aunt suggests that they take Tawa to her house, so Shintaro arranges for them to split up somewhere, and then she flies out onto the balcony and waits until Mari leaves. Before the plan, when they're saying goodbye, the boy's aunt goes to talk to Tawa and asks her to continue being friends with her nephew, because as much as he can be embarrassing from time to time, Shintaro is a great kid. As soon as they get back to the apartment, the protagonist finds out that his aunt isn't leaving tonight. She's going to sleep there so that she doesn't have to go back to work on her birthday, and at that moment, Shintaro only starts to think about poor Tawa, who's going to be on the balcony all this time. As Mari ends up venting about her boss and drops her name in the middle of the conversation, the protagonist ends up discovering that she is his favorite mangaka. He even gets excited and starts talking about the woman's works, which makes his aunt upset once again. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and when Shintaro opens the door, an angry woman walks past him and heads in Mari's direction. It turns out to be the author that the protagonist adores, and when she finds out that Mari is his legal guardian, she apologizes for having acted in such a way. Her name is Kita, and she's there because she's been looking for Mari everywhere and hasn't found her. It turns out that the woman wanted to celebrate her birthday and even bought a cake for it, but Mari couldn't even be found in her house. So the two leave together, and Shintaro is relieved to be able to let Tawa in. We then see Mari in the car with Kita, and she suggests that her next work should be about an angelic girl living in a studio apartment with a boy, but her supervisor isn't so keen on the idea. The next scene shows the protagonist leaving work and a girl bumping into him. This girl has a different colored eye and has asked for Shintaro's help, because according to her, there are two men chasing her, so the boy doesn't think twice. He takes her hand and they both run away as fast as they can. Even though, in reality, the men just wanted to give her a book she had dropped called Dracula. As soon as the two stop to rest, this girl starts to smell it and says that it smells very nice. Then she reveals that she believes these two men must be followers of Professor Helsing, an enemy who has been following her for many years. This leads us to discover that the girl is a vampire. Her name is Lilishka, and the protagonist is shocked to discover her race, as he was expecting to meet a demon or a kappa, but not a vampire. Then we discover that Lilishka doesn't actually have red eyes. She wears contact lenses because she thinks it suits her species better. And the protagonist, who was beginning to accept the idea that he had met a vampire, starts to think she's crazy and made up the whole story. He accompanies Lilishka to the place where she works, and as soon as he gets home, he tells Tawa about the situation that happened during his day, and the boy continues to think that the vampire is just living the main character's syndrome, in which he thinks that everything is about her and revolves around her. Shintaro is wrong about one thing, and during the night he finds out when he wakes up to Lilishka inside his house licking and smelling him. The vampire followed the boy's scent into the house. She couldn't ignore the fact that the smell was so good, and to get into the apartment, the girl broke the glass of the balcony door. Shintaro becomes increasingly embarrassed by Lilishka. He starts to think that the crazy girl is actually a pervert and asks her to leave. It's only then that the protagonist realizes that she really is a vampire, because Shintaro sees Lilishka using her wings and notices her fangs. The girl doesn't want to drink his blood. In fact, the vampire has adopted another method of drinking red liquid-like drinks, such as grape juice, which the protagonist says is very good. However, Lilishka is very attracted to Shintaro's scent and asks him to at least let her smell him. The protagonist doesn't feel comfortable with this, and at one point, unable to control her feelings, the vampire tries at all costs. In the end, Shintaro decides to give in and let her sleep there with the two of them, while Tawa falls asleep mouthing the words, "Please don't eat Shintaro." As soon as dawn breaks, the two notice that the vampire is no longer in the apartment. The angel comments to the protagonist that in the legends, vampires can't sunbathe, and now, she's afraid that the light that's entering the house has harmed Lilishka, so as a precaution, Tawa won't run a vacuum cleaner so as not to suck her dry, in case she's turned to dust. In the next scene, Shintaro is at school and Tsumuji approaches him to talk about the final exams. However, the protagonist has become so immersed in the subject of the vampire that he has completely forgotten about school life, so now he will have to spend all his free time studying to do as well as possible in these exams. At lunchtime, Shintaro discovers that Lilishka is doing very well, as the girl appears licking his face while he is eating. It turns out that the vampire goes to the same school as the protagonist. They're just in different classes, but they're in the same year. Lilishka only found out about this because she began to smell Shintaro's attractive scent and tracked him down. The girl left before he and Tawa woke up, as she had to go home to put on her uniform and go to school. However, Lilishka was thinking of going back to the apartment that night, and in response, Shintaro said that he would rather she didn't do that. He says goodbye to her, as he bought something in the canteen and needed to deliver it to his friend. As soon as he joins Tsumuji and the boy, Shintaro asks if they know Lilishka from class 2, but other girls join in and say that she must be the girl pretending to be a vampire. Tsumuji then asks if it isn't the girl who is staring at the protagonist, and when Shintaro looks at Lilishka, she turns her face away. Later, when he is finishing school, the protagonist is surprised when a bat appears holding a sign asking him to follow it. And Shintaro does, so he ignores what Tsumuji was saying and walks past Izumi without greeting her. The boy is taken to a room in the school, and there, Lilishka orders him to be her servant, which Shintaro immediately refuses. The protagonist doesn't understand why she's acting like this and discovers that the vampire thought he was embarrassed to be seen with her at school, so he was ignoring her and didn't want her to come to his house anymore. So Lilishka sees nothing else to do but become his master and order the boy to let her smell him. So the vampire begins to go after the protagonist, and then the two are surprised when Izumi and Tsumuji enter the room. Of course, the two are perplexed to learn that there is a vampire in their midst, and Lilishka is similarly perplexed to learn that Izumi is a Yukiana. The vampire realizes that he's surrounded by different girls, so she decides to apologize for the way she's been acting and confesses that she just wanted to have him as a friend. As soon as Lilishka starts crying, Shintaro realizes that her life isn't easy either, so he tells her that she can go to his house tonight and that they can be friends. With the final exams having come to an end, they found themselves once again in the occult club room, where the protagonist never thought they would spend so much time. Going back in time, we see the day they went there for the first time, and Izumi really wanted to study together with Shintaro, as she thinks that's what friends do. They didn't know exactly where to go until Lily gave them the idea of studying there. Since then, They have studied with Tsumuji in that room, and it was thanks to her that they managed to pass their exams, because the girl is a great teacher. Now that the exams are over, Tsumuji thought it would be better if they didn't use that room anymore, so as not to disturb the other members of that club, even if it seemed that Lily was the only one there. What's more, we discover that her real name is Sayuri and Lilishka is just the fictitious name she likes to be called. Looking to celebrate the end of the trials, they were about to go out to eat, but Shintaro realized that the club didn't have 3 members, which is the minimum number for a club to exist. However, when he opened the door, a girl was there and ended up falling, but when he tried to apologize, he made her cry. Her name is Tsurumi and she is the other member of the club, and every time the protagonist tried to speak, she seemed to get scared, which upset Shintaro. They all went somewhere to eat together, and Lily commented that the other members of the club were 3rd years, but since they had left, the occult club was about to close, so she invited them to join. Shintaro refused straight away, even though she offered free soft drinks and air conditioning. What's more, we see that Izumi and Tsumuji would join the club if the protagonist also wanted to. Shintaro tried to talk to Tsurumi once again, which didn't work, making him believe that she hates him. When they were thinking about which restaurant to go to, they realized that the summer festival was on, so they decided to go there. They were having a good time until Lily disappeared and appeared with lots of different foods. The vampire noticed that the protagonist was bothered, so he explained that he feels Tsurumi is more afraid of him than of the others. Lily said that the girl might be angry that he had seen her panties, which Shintaro denied having done, and the girl couldn't say anything. For the rest of the day, they had a lot of fun, trying lots of different foods, until when Shintaro was going to eat cucumber, he thought Tsurumi wanted some too, so he bought it for her. The girl tried to talk to him, but before she could, the other girls appeared. While they were talking and about to say goodbye, Lily started making a strange speech and looked like she was going to throw herself off the bridge. Shintaro tried to help her, but since she can fly, he fell into the river alone. Afraid that something would happen to him, Tsurumi jumped into the water and managed to save him. At that moment, she explained that she didn't hate him, she just wasn't used to talking to boys, that's why she was acting like that. She was apologizing, but when she saw that Shintaro was happy that they were able to talk, everything was fine. Until something strange appeared on Tsurumi's head, which the protagonist thought was a halo, thinking that she was also an angel. In addition, a hoof appeared on her back, so Shintaro realized that the girl was actually a kappa. Lily explained that if Tsurumi eats cucumber and goes into the water within an hour, she will turn into a kappa. The vampire also told her that her friend was no ordinary kappa, as her grandfather is the head of the Japan Kappa Federation, which runs the country in secret. She was worried, but Izumi calmed her down, saying she understood how she felt, so they wouldn't tell anyone about it. This made her very happy, and to complete the group, the protagonist called Tawa over, who was so excited that her wings began to appear. At home, the protagonist realized that he had never seen Tawa get angry, so he asked if the girl was guarding something. Even though she said she got angry too, Shintaro couldn't remember any such moment, and when he wondered if she didn't get angry because she was an angel, he remembered Shu, so he deduced that even though she was an angel, Tawa was an angel as a person. She was preparing dinner, which looked good, so Shintaro wanted to try it, but when she was about to put the food in his mouth, the protagonist didn't accept it and ate it with his own hands. On their way home from school, Shintaro and the girls saw a new cafe, so they decided to go in. In addition, Tawa was on her way back from the market and saw the 3 of them there, but she got angry when she saw Izumi trying to feed the protagonist, because she remembered that he had refused when she had offered. In fact, Shintaro also refused Izumi, but when he came home with a slice of cake for Tawa to try, she didn't want to because she was angry with him. The girl couldn't understand what she was feeling and was afraid she was jealous. In the end, she accepted the cake and the protagonist told her that his summer vacation would start the next day, so he promised her that they would go somewhere together. Meanwhile, Izumi was at home watching TV, until she began to think that she still hadn't gotten over her trauma of not having any friends. However, as she had Shintaro, she was happy in seeing that a movie she wanted to see was playing at the cinema. She decided that she would invite the protagonist the next day. She knew that he would be working until 3 p.m., so she went close to that time, but when she arrived, she saw that all the other girls were in the restaurant. Even so, she invited him, but as another employee couldn't make it to work, he had to stay there until later. As the 3:30 p.m. screening that day will be the last one, they won't be able to go, which was making her very sad. However, Lily and the other girls seemed interested in going to the movies, especially since Tawa had never been. So they decided that they would go to see the movie with Izumi, even though in reality the girl only wanted to go with Shintaro. When they arrived, everything was going very well and they all loved the movie, especially Tawa. However, Izumi still wanted to watch the movie with Shintaro, and when Lily gave them the idea of seeing it again with the protagonist in the club room, she and Tsumuji agreed. As they left the cinema, the girls were in high spirits as they chatted about the movie, until Izumi also joined in the conversation and they all kept talking about the difference between the movie and the book. In addition, Izumi realized that she was having a lot of fun, even without Shintaro, so after the others thanked her for letting them know about the movie, Izumi thanked them too, saying that she was glad they had gone with her even though they weren't friends. When they heard this, the girls didn't understand, because for them, they were all already friends. The girl couldn't understand that they could be friends naturally, because for her, she had to ask them to be friends. So, when she realized that she was already friends with everyone, Izumi ran out and was very happy, thinking that she owed it all to Shintaro. What's more, she realized that she liked the protagonist more than just as a friend, and when she bumped into him, she understood that the boy was more than just a friend to her. In this way, she deduced that she saw him as a best friend and, with the girls showing up, they left. The scene cuts and we see the protagonist and Tawa trying to cool off in the bathtub, as the air conditioning had broken and it was very hot. Looking at how she was dressed, the boy was embarrassed and decided to catch a breeze on the balcony, but only felt the hot air. Suddenly, Lily appeared and when she tried to bite him, she realized that the boy needed a bath. She was there to give them the invitation to the occult club's camp, but Shintaro refused, saying he wasn't part of the club. This left the vampire worried, as she only managed to convince Tsumuji and Izumi by saying that he would go too. So, after a lot of begging and saying that everything would be free, the protagonist asked if there would be air conditioning, and after the girl confirmed it, he agreed. In the next scene, we see Shintaro and Tawa arriving at the meeting point that was on the invitation for everyone to be taken together to the camp. However, the two were surprised when they came across the height of the building. After climbing to the roof of the structure, the group is taken by helicopter to where the camp is located. When they arrive, Tsumuji understands where all their friends' wealth comes from, as she is part of the family of one of Japan's big four conglomerates. And Lily adds that Tsurumi's grandfather is the head of Japan's Kappa Federation. Shintaro is shocked to come across several maids when they are introduced to the workers on site. And in the residence, there is a lake that runs underneath the structure that was built by a family member who started the great lineage of wealth and power that they carry on to this day. The twin maids tell an old legend about the lake. Two lovers tried to exchange their shirikodamas for love and met the creator, so it is said that those who confess their love by the lake will be together forever. However, Shintaro doesn't know what a shirikodama is and decides to ask the women, who reply that they are precious things found in a hole halfway down the body, and embarrassed, add that the protagonist is being a bit inconvenient, and be careful when you Google it. Later, we discover that Lily hasn't prepared many group dynamics as she had commented, so they end up having the day off and decide to enjoy it on the beach. Although the girls hadn't brought swimsuits, there was a wide range of bikinis and swimsuits on offer. However, Shintaro discovered that there was nothing for men, and the maids were surprised that he was a man, as Tsurumi finds it difficult to talk to boys. It turns out that as the girl is going to take over the leadership of her family one day, she needs to keep herself pure in order to give her shirikodama to the person she loves. That's why she was brought up with only women around her, and until then, the only men she interacted with were from her family. However, the conversation is interrupted when the girls start arriving, and as almost all of them are wearing bikinis, Shintaro doesn't know where to look. The only one who is fully covered is Lily, who is wearing a costume because she's a vampire and can't have much contact with the sun. The group spends the day having fun there and then eats something prepared by Shintaro. The protagonist and Tsurumi even managed to exchange more words than usual, before the girl fled in shame to the vampire's side. Later, Tawa sat next to Shintaro and commented on it being her first time on a beach, and although she enjoyed everything, the Anya was only embarrassed to wear a bikini, as she feels as if she's only wearing her underwear. As the house is specially designed for women, the maids warn Shintaro that he has to take a bath after dinner, so the girls go to a hot spring while he cleans himself elsewhere. The spring is called Tsurumi, because it was prepared for her first bath, and since it's hot water, we soon see Izumi's pressure drop because she's a Yukiana. This way, the girl's body sticks out. At this point, Tsumuji starts comparing her body with the others. Izumi realized that her friend was looking at that part of her, so she asked if Tsumuji wanted to touch it, but the girl told Izumi that it was just something men made up and didn't happen in real life. The girl was embarrassed, not knowing what was fiction and what she was supposed to do in real life, so it started snowing there. Meanwhile, Shintaro was waiting for them to return so he could have dinner, and before they showed up, the boy received a threat from the maids that if he tried to do anything to take away Tsurumi's purity, he would be punished for it. Later, we see that they all slept in the same room and the protagonist ended up alone in one. So, as he was having trouble falling asleep, he decided to take advantage of the fact that there would be no one at the fountain and go for a swim. However, when he got there, he bumped into Tsurumi and they were both embarrassed. So that Shintaro wouldn't leave, the girl told him to stay on one side, while she stayed on the other. What's more, Tsurumi ends up thanking him for coming, because she thinks that if the boy hadn't accepted the invitation, no one but Lilishka would have shown up, and Tsurumi says he feels that there's something around him that makes everyone relax and have fun. The protagonist takes advantage of Tsurumi's normal conversation with him and asks her why she changed schools. It turns out that when she was in elementary school, the girl saved a lady from drowning in the water, and she told her a prophecy, that as soon as Tsurumi put herself in an environment with men, a new world would open up to her. However, it was difficult for Tsurumi to adapt to the new place, and things only started to get fun once Shintaro showed up. These words made the protagonist very happy, and now he believes that it was really worth going to the camp. However, when he was returning to his room, the maids caught him and forced him to sumo wrestle with them, as punishment for having taken away some of Tsumuri's innocence. Also, in the next scene, we see that Lily wakes up in the middle of the night saying that she has forgotten something that seems to be important. After training with the maids, the protagonist arrived at his room tired, but before he could sleep, Lily appeared and said that she had forgotten something very important, that they needed to summon a demon. When he got there, all the girls were there and Tawa looked very sleepy. As they are part of the occult club, Lily said it was their duty to do things like this, even though Shintaro said he wasn't part of the club. With everything ready, they began the invocation, using a chocolate chicken as a sacrifice. Although it was unexpected, the invocation was working, but instead of summoning a demon, they ended up summoning Shu, who didn't understand anything and quickly returned to the sky. Knowing that it worked, they were very excited, especially Izumi, who really wanted to do it again. When they were returning to their rooms, they realized that they were no longer sleepy, so they decided to play with some fireworks. Since Tawa didn't know them, she was afraid they would explode, but the protagonist helped her and she thought it was very beautiful. This made Tsumuji jealous, but Shintaro also went to help her and she was happier. In this way, they all had a lot of fun together, and the protagonist realized that this was the best summer vacation he had ever had. The scene cuts to a few days later, where Shintaro and Tawa have gone to visit the Tokyo Skytree, which is nothing more than a gigantic building with an observatory at the top. Before going there, the two went to a shopping mall, and when they saw that lots of girls were wearing yukatas, he rented one for the girl and she looked very pretty. When they were about to go upstairs, Tawa discovered that they needed money to do so, so she said they didn't have to go. As a result, the protagonist had to insist that they go up there, as the girl even wanted to take off the yukata she was wearing, when she found out that it also cost money. When they arrived at the observatory, Tawa was very happy, and we discovered that her eyesight was enhanced, as she could even see what people were doing on the ground. As they walked around, she found it strange to see that humans were afraid of heights, but when the protagonist explained that they don't have wings and could end up dying if they fell, she realized this and said that he should be more afraid. However, after the protagonist said that she would save him if he fell, everything was fine. As they passed a souvenir store, Shintaro noticed that Tawa liked something, and after they saw a child talking to his mother, she asked if the protagonist missed his family. Shintaro said that they are abroad, but now he doesn't feel lonely because he has Tawa with him, who feels the same way. After having a lot of fun, they ended up losing each other, which made her afraid, until Shintaro showed up, so they started walking around holding each other, which made them both embarrassed. As night fell, they were about to leave, but it was so much fun for her that she didn't want to leave. So Shintaro gave her that little souvenir she had liked, and Tawa was so happy that she wanted to give something back. So they went into an alley and she told the boy to close his eyes. Shintaro thought she was going to kiss him, but when she opened her eyes, they were flying above the building. This made him very afraid, but after she reassured him, she told him about the joy she had been feeling since they met and that she believed it was all thanks to him. So they flew home and Shintaro was very scared. Back to the routine, we see the protagonist leaving work and he was happy, but in a hurry to get home and be with Tawa. Well guys, that's the end of the first season. If you liked the video, leave a like and comment down here. I hope all is well with you until next time.